Each of us has a story, and each of our stories have value, not only for making sense of our own lives, but they also have value to others. We share our stories with one another, and we together have a story. Religion itself is nothing if not the teller of true tales, tales we can have faith in. Of course, those tales, as the late New Testament scholar Marcus Borg points out, need not be factual. But more, religion teaches us to find and tell our stories, because we find truth and freedom in the telling of our own story. I was very fortunate to spend a few days with Unitarian Universalists from all over the West at this year's regional assembly. I believe everyone from this congregation who went to the assembly would agree that it was worth the time and effort to get there. Today, I would like to share one thread of my experience that spoke to me. The session I found most interesting and helpful at the assembly involved taking the insights of narrative therapy, drawing on its healing power, and applying it to group struggles, such as churches, movements, or nations. Narrative therapy tells us that we are not our stories, and paradoxically, we are only the stories we tell ourselves. That is, I am not in essence the story I have told or adopted for myself, but I must tell or adopt some story. When we adopt or create a story, we have a choice, a moment of freedom. Narrative therapy tells us that we can be the master of our own stories, telling them in a way that can create joy and healing in our lives rather than fear. We can heal by retelling old dark tales in a light of hope and love. Transforming the story transforms us. One reason this session spoke so deeply to me is because I discovered in the session that I had used the insights of narrative therapy in my own recovery from alcoholism. At the beginning of the recovery process, when I was lying at the bottom, I had to erase the tragic ending I had told myself. I needed to find something honest, but open-ended enough to include love, hope, joy, and healing. This plot change was a matter of life and death for me. At a hopeless state, unable to create my own story, I initially had to identify with and borrow stories from others to displace the destructive story I was telling myself. Somewhere during this time, I ordered a copy of Rembrandt's The Return of the Prodigal Son. But eventually, I had to tell my own story. I found the story I told had to be a story of hope, love, gratitude, and forgiveness. But first, it had to be honest. And now I can offer that story to others. The session on narrative therapy discussed how we can take old, unhelpful stories that have only held back a congregation or a group and recast them in a way that allows for growth. As each narrative transformation was shared, the same elements were present. Congregations went from fatalistic and dead to congregations of hope, love, gratitude, and forgiveness. The congregations revisited their core values and asked, how do we have a spiritually vibrant community that can be a true home to all its members, be welcoming to newcomers, and be prophetic in a suffering world? I found this session helpful in thinking about our congregation. As we look forward to a possible physical change in our church, we can discuss those changes in a way that is anxiety-creating, uncertain, frustrating, destabilizing, and so on. There will likely be periods of fear and uncertainty. There will be times of sacrifice and change. Considering these concerns, one story of congregational transformation stood out. The First Unitarian Church of Portland has a beautiful location downtown in a historic church building. During the session, we were told of a difficult decision that faced that congregation when a devastating fire hit the church in 1965. Decide, rebuild or sell and move to a new location in the suburbs. It was a deeply trying experience for the congregation. To this day, those who were members during the decision can still recall which side of this issue they were on. No matter the choice, there would be disappointment and possibly a broken community. Eventually, the congregation decided to remain at its location and rebuild. And it has healed and is a healthy and loving congregation to this day. Key to this healing, we were told, was how the congregation crafted its narrative. By hearing the path of another community that faced even more significant pressures than we, a difficult decision and moving forward can be made. And we too can create a story that is honest, that is hopeful, that is loving, and is grateful. I don't offer a story, but I offer some suggestions as to what a good story may look like. Again, the story should be a story of love, hope, gratitude, and forgiveness. Any spiritual community at its best tells such stories. And we tell true stories, stories that shy not away from discomfort or silence anyone. We must not tell false, violent, dark stories, stories of exclusion and dishonesty. These destroy community. Rather, we offer stories of communing, not because we are the same, but because we have common goals and values. A hopeful narrative is an honest assessment that does not ignore the difficulties related to difficult decisions and does not catastrophize the outcome. The session connected with a central question of the entire conference. How do we tell a story of ourselves as Unitarian Universalists, as UU congregations, and as Unitarian Universalism as a movement that can give hope in the world today? If we can't tell a story that will, solve the darkness and struggle we see around us, we can tell a story that is able to accept the truth we experience and accept one another, and we can offer that story to our world. That is our offering, our sacrifice, and our gift. We will walk with this world, and we'll bless this world, love this world, forgive this world, and cry with this world. At times, we may have to carry this world, but no one needs to do that alone. We do it together. When I started my personal path of recovery, I learned that struggle was a shared struggle. Similarly, when we face injustice in this world, we face it with justice and love together. And what brings us together is the sharing and creating of stories together. In the midst of people with shared values of love and openness, the conference offered an alternative vision for the world. Personally, the best part of the conference was being able to share time with those who are seeking to create an open and loving society. It was a phenomenal experience of speaking with and worshiping with fellow UUs. Rooms filled with love. I hope to make it a regular part of my involvement with this community. Beyond all that, I developed deeper relationships with those who I went to the assembly with from this local community. I'm happy to call these people friends. Susan, Sue, Pat, Michael, Dan. I hope to go with more of you next time, or perhaps to the General Assembly in Spokane next year. In the words of Michael's daughter-in-law, let's go. It'll be great.